My guest on the show today is Justin Walker, owner of MilMak Blades, a SWAT officer in a very active city in Arizona. We have a great discussion about being a veteran cop, navigating the mental health issues, and what we wish we could have done sooner in our careers to make sure we maintained our health. Stay with us.
You are a warrior.
321 status.
What kind of vehicle is it?
You are the very best your nation has to offer.
911.
Multiple shots fired.
They're asking you to lead.
5. We need a Bearcat.
It's up to us.
So 133. I need somebody that's got a visual on where the shooter is.
You must be sound in mind, body, and spirit.
42, where's the officer down? I have a rescue helicopter that wants to land and help.
This is the podcast that will make you the one.
Copy running eastbound.
The one that will bring everyone back.
Trouble, we have shots fired. Give me backup now.
Because no one else is coming.
We're going to have an officer shot. 100 block of East Street.
Suspect is down.
This is the Squad Room.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another fantastic episode of the Squad Room. I'm your host, Garrett Tesla. I'm an active duty sergeant for a sheriff's office in Southern California. And on this show, we try to work out the tips, tactics, and strategies for navigating this challenging career during these challenging times so that we can be successful, we can be healthy, we can lead with purpose, and we can serve something greater than ourselves. My guest today is a fantastic human being. Really enjoyed this conversation. Justin Walker, owner of MilMak Blades, an active duty officer in a very active department on a very active full-time SWAT team. And we've got about the same amount of time on the job. He's also a coppreneur. I'm going to trademark that phrase, coppreneur. And he's got his own podcast, the Man Minutes podcast. And we just seem to have a lot in common before we ever hit record. And sure enough, we just gelled, and I really enjoyed this conversation. And we talk about, navigating, having a side hustle, and working, and the cynicism that comes with being a cop and having a job on the side. How that's kind of looked down upon versus in the fire service. Being a podcaster and some of the issues he's had or the challenges he's had and that I've had with sharing such personal information, but also the good things that come out of it, the importance of creativity, the importance of prioritizing your life so you can navigate. I mean, he's got 2 kids. His kids are almost the exact same age as mine. He's married, so married cop with kids, podcaster, got a side hustle. Really, really, really enjoyed the conversation. You don't have to be a coppreneur to get anything out of this. You don't have to be a podcaster. We hit on some topics about going to therapy and mental health and talking ourselves off this insane idea that if you haven't been in a shooting, then you haven't been tested. That was something we didn't expect to talk about, but we did, and it really, I think, will hit home for a lot of you. So take a listen here in just a second. I want to thank, though, our sponsors for this episode. This COVID-19 nonsense is just really thrown a lot of people for a loop when it comes to managing their physical fitness, and it's changed the game on how we can handle it. I mean, gyms have been closed, and now it seems like they're starting to open up a little bit more and in different parts of the country. But a lot of people have gravitated towards working out at home, or they've lost the connection with their routine and they need to get back to it. And a lot of people have been left scrambling to replace home gym routines with something they can do at home, and it's just a mess. Well, this episode's sponsored by Hard to Kill Fitness, and I think they have a solution to the problem of figuring out what to do once you're able to get back into the gym or if you're going to continue working out at home. Hard to Kill is run by a team of military veterans and active duty police officers who offer simple and highly effective and proven functional training workouts you can do at home or at the gym. Their routines focus on basic equipment and fundamental movements, so you don't have to learn how to do Olympic lifts or complex movements, and you don't need a full CrossFit box to do these workouts. Hard to Kill Fitness develops workouts specifically for the demands of military and first responder communities, and their goal is to prepare you physically and mentally for the challenges we all face on the streets. Each workout comes as a PDF and includes detailed descriptions of the movements in each workout, tips on mindset, and a progressive path that builds on the previous work you've put in. You also get access to the private Facebook group, and you can interact with the coaches there by email or by Instagram. Please check them out. Let them know you appreciate their support of our show by following them on Instagram at hardtokill_fitness or their website, hardtokillfitness.co. And again, make sure you tell them you heard about them on the Squad Room because they really got some great stuff. If you haven't listened to the episode with Matt, the operational athlete, you absolutely need to. He is one of the leaders of Hard to Kill Fitness, and the guy he'll get you fired up. So check out that episode with Matt, and thank Hard to Kill Fitness for their support of the Squad Room. Also want to remind you that our shop is open. You can go to thesquadroom.net and in our menu, click shop to get some really cool t-shirts, stickers, mugs, gear, things that celebrate the positive aspects of service that we're all in. Not a lot of aggro stuff that's over the top, stuff that tells everybody you're a cop. It's just sort of a subtle nod towards the work that we do. And you can check it out through our website, or you can go straight to aworthycauselife.com. That's not a sponsor. That's actually our side hustle to the side hustle, I suppose. Anyway, really enjoyed this episode talking to Justin. Take a listen. Justin Walker, welcome to the Squad Room. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm excited to have a man on the show who's also a cop, a fellow podcaster, a fellow coppreneur. So yeah, excited to have you here. So let's jump right into talking a little bit about your background so people can understand the context of where our conversation is going to go today. So tell us about what part of the country you're in, the kind of size of the agency you work for, and what your assignment is or assignments have been, and why'd you get into police work? Why'd you get into service?
Yeah, no problem. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, man. I love the show, so it's an honor to be on. So I am in a major metropolitan agency in Arizona, so you can figure that one out. And been there for 15 years now. And kind of growing up, I always was super into like old Western movies, right? Like that was my thing. Like I loved John Wayne. Matter of fact, when I was like little, that's what I made my mom and dad call me for like a year of my life was John Wayne. Always had like a little 6-shooter on my side. And kind of as I got older, I knew that's what my career path was going to be. I played football in high school, a little bit in college, ended up getting hurt, and so it was military or law enforcement. Some of the football injuries, I was having some trouble with some of the military stuff so I was like, okay, I'm going to apply and end up getting hired, and I've been there since.
About 15 years on, and what are some of the things you've done in your time in the agency? I'm always curious because there's so many different things you can do in this career.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny because I remember telling myself when I was a young cop, like I'm not going to spend all my time in one place. There's, especially with all agencies, but especially like a big city, there's so many different places you can go, right? There's hundreds of different details. And I started out as on patrol, as we all do. And then I went to, it's called a neighborhood enforcement team, which is a precinct-based kind of a crime suppression unit. So whatever problems are in that precinct, you work on those, whether it's burglary, robbery, it's kind of half plainclothes, half marked. I was there for a little bit, and then I got on to our SWAT team. And I've been there for the past 11 years now. And
you're in a city that is big enough that it justifies having a full-time team.
Yeah, so we have a full-time, just over 40 guys team separated into 4 squads. And yeah, we stay plenty busy, busier than I would like sometimes.
Yeah. So with that, busy, because it is busy, I'm aware of the area that you're in and the kind of city and the kind of environment. You've got a lot of drug trafficking that comes through that city, and a lot of that high-end narco crime. You're busy. So the thought I have when you mention all those things is, okay, here's a busy guy at work, and yet he's also running his own edged weapons company, MilMak Blades, and you've got your own podcast. How do you manage and navigate juggling all these priorities on top of being an attentive husband and dad? Because frankly, I'd love to know for myself.
No, man, it's exactly what you said. It is a juggle. And I think that is one thing I have found out is that something's always got to give. Mm-hmm. So when I'm really really dialed in with maybe my podcast, then maybe the blades fall off. When I'm really dialed in with the blades, maybe the podcast falls off. Or maybe I'm dialed in on those two, but then I'm not spending enough time with my wife and kids. So it's that constant juggle and just awareness of what all your responsibilities and priorities are and figuring those things out. I know for me personally, one of the things that has helped me a ton is like I have my priorities, right? And my priorities are my marriage, my kiddos, my teammates at work, and then my side businesses are kind of in the same as my work. And always going back to those is kind of what keeps me grounded and kind of keeps things in line. But yeah, it's definitely constantly busy and a constant struggle to try to balance and figure things out.
Do you ever have situations with is your wife good about reminding you what those priorities are, or is she keeping you on task?
Yeah, so she is, man, like she is awesome. We've known each other. We've been best friends since we were 13 years old. We started dating at the end of high school. Been together 20 years now. So I would say I'm super fortunate to have a relationship where we are just like super honest, and it's not adversarial, right? Like she'll straight up tell me like, hey, you're spending too much time in the garage working on blades. We need to balance things out. Or hey, work's been crazy this week, so we got to give somewhere else. And I'll do the same for her because she is a hard worker. Like she can lock herself in her office and go on her stuff for 16 hours a day. And so we're always just kind of very open and very aware of that and keep each other kind of in check.
Do you think that's a product of the fact that you've just known each other so long? Because I know married couples that are in their 20th year or so, and they don't have that level of honesty with each other, or the ability to be told, hey, you're kind of skewing the wrong way here, pull it back, without getting defensive. And I think cops especially, we don't like we don't like anything that's perceived as criticism, right?
For sure.
That's just like, nobody does, but that's like ingrained in us more than like the average citizen, I think,
Yeah, absolutely.
We bristle at that much faster. What is it about what you've either learned how you talk to each other, or was there, tell me a little bit more about that. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So definitely, I'm sure it has something to do with that. We've known each other and been together for so long. But I would say that's a very small part, man. Like it's an active thing for us. And it's something we've had conversations about, like, hey, I know I get defensive, just like you said, like that's the natural reaction for us, like with this job, that just kind of breeds it into you a little bit. And I think we've just had so many talks over the years, like, hey, like neither of us have bad intentions for each other, right? Like if my goal is to get you to stop doing something, it's because I want to be with you or I want to spend more time with you, but it's for your benefit as well, just to kind of keep you aware. So that's something we always talk about, is like, hey, we don't have bad intentions. So really taking that to heart and understanding those things, that when she says, hey, you seem a little edgy when you got home from work, like, hey, you're being a little snappy with the kids, or a little quick to respond to me. Like I used to be pretty bad about that, man. And sometimes I still am having a hard time, like talking to my wife, like I'm with a teammate at work, right? Mm-hmm. Like just very, very blunt, very to the point, like, and having those conversations about it and getting to the point where you know that they have your best interest in mind and not being defensive is a continual work, and it's a continual communication thing. And we just choose to make it a priority, really. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I think, you said it about your teammates at work, and we have a willingness to talk openly and honestly with people at work, and we're used to the debriefs, and we're used to the the deconstructing what went right and what went wrong at work. But when we get home, it's a different challenge. And I think we sometimes forget that they are on our team, right? And our spouses, our kids, they're all on the same team. They want us to succeed. They're doing whatever they think is right to make the entire experience of living and experiencing life together better. And we sometimes approach it that they're on a different team. And that's a great reminder. I like that. So you juggle all these things. You got, you're on a full-time SWAT team in a very active city, and you mentioned the Blades. So I wanted to talk about being when I don't think I'm the first person to come up with this, but a coppreneur, right? And you hear about firemen all the time running side gigs because they got, you know, 2 days off in between every shift, and they're running their construction business or whatever it is, their painting side job. You make blades, knives, edged weapons, and that's what you were drawn towards. What's it been like starting a side business like that, and navigating that while still doing the work and everything else?
Yeah, so it's difficult. I'm sure, as you know, it's not. There's sort of a stigma to it, at least in my department, especially on the team. Sometimes, usually the guys are super supportive, but there's definitely that. It's the difference of like putting yourself out there, putting your name out there, your face. All of those things kind of come into play. But for me, it started as kind of a hobby. Like I used to weld and build like roll cages and Baja bumpers and stuff like that on trucks. Mm-hmm. And the house I'm in now, there's just no way to do that. So I started making knives, started making blades a while back, just as a way to kind of decompress, man. Like we'd get into some hairy stuff at work or see some things that you really don't want to see. And it's hard to make that transition to just go walk in and be a husband and be a dad. So it was a way for me to go in the garage for a little bit, spend 30, 45 minutes to kind of decompress, take my mind off some things. And it just kind of grew from there. Started getting some demand, and it's very therapeutic for me. Obviously now it's a business, right? I'm running a business, and there's supply and demand, and I'm trying to figure out how to scale and do all these things. But I've always liked weapons, right? I've always liked guns. I've always liked blades. Whatever it was, I've always enjoyed it. So it's just been fun to build that. And go ahead.
No, I was fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, as things go, I'm sure, I don't know how it is on your department, but it's definitely different to be that coppreneur, right? It's not super popular with some. And part of that, I think, is just the idea that you have something outside maybe. But for me, like, I don't want to be a cop for 30 years. Like, I just don't want to do that. I want to do my 20 and be done and move on to the next phase of my life and have something there that I've established and built so I can keep going. And I think there's just so much more to it than, like, I love being a police officer. I absolutely love the job. I love what I do, but I also know that like 20 years of my life dedicated to that business does not define me 100%. Right.
Yeah, that's I could edit that last phrase you just said and just repeat that for an hour on a loop and make that a whole new episode for anyone who's coming on the job new, right? The job doesn't define you as a person, but we let it do it that to us so often.
For sure.
And I think I went through that in my own way a couple of years ago. When you're talking, I think of two thoughts on this, and I agree that it's looked down upon by some officers, especially by command, it seems, to do anything that is not dedicated to the department. You know, I've been questioned on my dedication to the department and my willingness to go the extra mile for the department because of the podcast, right? And not always. I've also had people who've been very supportive, right? So it goes both ways. But you're right. There is sort of a cynical snicker that goes through the department when they hear about you doing something new. I'm going through that right now, with launching a t-shirt line and the stuff for the show and just being creative. I think that's the other part of it is that, I've realized that creativity in any form, whether it's producing a podcast or editing it or doing anything that's creative, writing something, is really crucial to my way to decompress. And it seems like making blades that's a creative process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's like I used to oil paint when I was younger. Like I've always had that kind of outlet and I need that. Like I have to have that to kind of maintain my sanity. And I think so many dudes out there don't.
Yeah.
And when you find it and it becomes successful, I think maybe sometimes some people don't quite understand that, but I've been pretty fortunate. My command is awesome. My teammates have been really awesome. You get that, you said it best, like that cynical snicker, like, what do they think they're doing? Why is he trying to do that? What makes them special? but I think I always just got to remind myself that like there's an end game in mind, and I'm not the dude that's going to retire and just be done working. Like I'm going to be the dude that retires as a police officer and is getting better every day and becoming more successful every day, not just done because that part of me's done.
Yeah, it's a really good perspective to have, and I encourage anybody who's listening who maybe had a point in their life where they were creative and they're not anymore, and they that might be the key that's lacking in that balance of navigating, the career and everything else that's going on, is having an outlet that's not just physical fitness outlet. That's important too, and getting all of the toxic chemicals out of your body and flushed out and all that stress, but having an expression in some way too is really missed. And I struggled with it for a long time, just thinking, people were going to think it was silly or stupid, that imposter syndrome, and then I just finally did it.
Yeah.
And, as much as we joke about it or talk about it being a cynical thing, there is some of that, but it's been quite a bit in the opposite direction, really, for the most part. People who see someone being creative at the end of it, if they're not jealous, if they're critical or they're cynical, they're jealous. And everyone else who has their own thing is just supportive, because you're not encroaching on their sense of their own identity by doing it,
No, and I think that's what's cool. And I think so many dudes need it. Like you gotta have a way to kind of compartmentalize your life, and you can't just always, like, don't get me wrong. Like I am a cop. Like that is who I am to a very big extent. And it's who I probably always will be to a very big extent. But as I've moved through this career, and after 15 years, man, you carry away a lot of baggage, and there's a lot of things that are stuck with you for the rest of your life. And if you don't have, whether it's a creative outlet, if you don't have some type of good outlet that you can find confidence and success in yourself in some other manner, then it just makes things rough. Yeah.
It's going to be a long 20, 30 years, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So as we were getting ready to talk today, I realized I've had firearms topics on a few times. It's not my favorite topic, because just like any cop, I like guns and I like shooting and all that sort of stuff. But there's only so many ways you can approach a topic if it's not physically touching, manipulating, and shooting a firearm. So I haven't done a whole lot of episodes on firearms, even though they're always like 20 times the downloads of everything else, because just people who aren't cops listen to those.
Yeah.
But I realized I haven't had an episode on edged weapons or all that. And I don't want to make this an entire episode on the one topic, but thought it'd be a good point to have a cop on who makes edged weapons to discuss the importance of carrying one, and what do you recommend, and the types, and carry considerations, off-duty considerations, because I think it really is important. I carry a short, time saver kind of knife near my taser that I've carried for years. But let's talk about that for a little bit. What do you think is the importance of carrying a backup edged weapon like that?
So I think for me, like I've always carried a fixed blade, just because it's exactly that, right? Like it's something that can create distance. It's easy to conceal. It's easy to put somewhere, and there's no mechanical failures that can be involved in that, right? In a very close quarters kind of fight in the phone booth thing, where I got a backup gun on my ankle, bad guy's going for the gun on my hip, I can't get to my ankle, I can have a fixed blade on me that allows me a different option to solve that problem, or to fix things, to create distance. It just gives you a different way to do things, and it's way easier to conceal even off duty. I know a ton of cops, like I always carry my pistol off duty, but I know a ton of cops that don't, and they carry a blade, and it at least gives them something to have and to be with. And I think that edged weapons, that art, that practice can really show itself in those close quarters kind of environments where you got in a foot pursuit, and now you're in a fight in an alley, and it's dark and no one's around you, and maybe your holster broke, maybe you were in a struggle and guns being fought over or guns on the ground, like it gives you an option other than a second backup pistol, which I know cops are 50-50 on to begin with, man. I think it's a different one.
Yeah, I think it's harder to talk about the backup pistol because there's way more that goes into that than.
Yeah.
But I think and I've gone both ways on that one too. I've carried an ankle holster before. I've also not carried one. I've had that thing fly off in a foot pursuit. But it's just something that you have to make your own decision on. I think though, with weapons, we all carry like a switchblade knife or a thumb device knife to cut things and do that sort of stuff. But we often rely on that as our blade for those knockdown, drag out fights as well. And you point out like there's a mechanical issue in that fixed blade and trying to open that thing out with your thumb or any sort of a switch or a button or anything like that may prevent you from being able to deploy that thing correctly versus a fixed blade where you just pointed out, I think the main reason to carry one is there is zero mechanical issues when it comes to that blade.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like a folding blade, whether it's an auto, like a flipper, whatever, is always going to have some type of mechanical issue that makes it open. And there's always going to be some type of locking mechanism to keep it open. And I've seen a lot of those fail. And the fixed blade doesn't give you that problem, right? It's a straight piece of metal that, like, if it's made right and it's heat treated right, like that thing's not going to break in a fight. So it just gives you that option. For me, it's that fail safe, that foolproof option that I know is always there, and that I can always have with me. I never advocate carrying that instead of a folder or in place of. Like I always carry both. Like my folder is my cutting things open, cutting packages, cutting whatever, and the fixed blade is a fixed blade. It's a weapon, right? That's what it's for.
It's a weapon, not a tool, as much as the folder is. Where do you? Because now you're in TAC gear most of the time nowadays, so you kind of have lots of options on where to put it. But for a patrol officer, where do you recommend they put that fixed blade in comparison to where their gun is?
So I always kind of recommend off gun side, right? So if I'm a righty and my pistol's on my right, then somewhere on the left side of my body, because I think that's the scenario that we always come up with, or talking to guys that it always is there's someone went for the gun grab, you secured your holster with your right hand, and now your left hand is either fighting them off or trying to get to your backup weapon, whatever it is. So somewhere on opposite side carry, close to center line if possible, so you could get it with both hands if needed. But yeah, that's what I kind of always recommend.
So what are some of the things that you dealt? We talked about kind of the navigating the attitude that cops should be fully dedicated to the department at all times. The side hustle thing and the importance of carrying weapons. What have been some of the nice surprises out of running your own business on the side in addition to being an officer?
I think the coolest thing is just the self gratification it gives you, like to seeing it grow. Like I'm always a fan of when you talk about confidence, right? Confidence is the ability to do what you tell yourself you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So when you say, hey, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to start Blades, and you see it through and you see it grow and you see it be successful, like that is super gratifying. And I would say right up there, just as gratifying to me is just the support from other people doing the same thing, right? Talking to you here, talking to other cops that are running their own businesses and able to have that kind of outside influence, outside thought to just do something different and kind of break the norm. You're not just the dude in a uniform with a badge and a gun all the time that drinks a ton of beer and then goes home and beats the wife. Like I think there's so many missed stereotypes about that. But when you get into making something yourself and building it and just learning something new, I think is just so gratifying. So
then, talk about something new and building stuff. You also have a podcast. You're a podcaster as well. Your show is the Man Minutes Podcast. Talk to me about, if your experience was like mine, you had this idea bouncing around in your head about doing a podcast long before you actually wrote anything down or hit record on anything.
Yeah.
And as I've found, and I don't know if you agree with this, but doing a podcast is one of the most like soul-bearing experiences you can go through, because even if you're not talking about like super personal stuff, your show, you talk on, much like this one, where we talk about ideas, we talk about kind of the self-confidence or developing yourself, self-development stuff, and you're putting your own thoughts down on record and sort of planting your flag in the ground when you do that. And you almost certainly expose yourself to being called out or being questioned or having your ideas questioned. So it takes a lot of fortitude to actually hit record. What was the process leading up to you deciding to do a podcast, and why are you doing one?
So for me, part of it was the creative part, and then part of it was just like I've always listened to podcasts, and I'd been hearing so many that I felt just were like disingenuine, just silly kind of rah stuff. And I wanted to get something out there that was serious, that talked about like bigger issues than like the cool guns and the foot pursuits and things like that. Mm-hmm. And again, it was therapeutic for me. It was a way for me to put my ideas out there, talk about some stuff I've been involved in, some of the stuff I deal with, and say, hey man, like I've been a cop for 15 years. I've been an athlete my whole life. I've been involved in a couple lethal force incidents, and like I struggle with this stuff. Like I struggle daily with stuff. So to be able to say that and have guys reach out and have guys listen and just get those thoughts out there is what made me start. I just wanted to put something out there that was pure and that was genuine and just real.
How's the response been? You've been at it about a year. How's the response been since you started?
It's been pretty cool. I think as you get, like you put a message out, and you talked about it on one of your, I think it was a briefing topic about like when you're most open and most kind of vulnerable, like you get the best response. And I've had a couple of those where guys were like, dude, I was headed down a pretty rough path, and I listened to that, and that was like, got me out of the dumps, or thanks for talking about that. I don't have anybody on my department that I can talk to it about, and they think I'm weak if I do bring it up. So I appreciate it. And that's been the coolest thing to see, is just those individual little interactions that make it all worth it.
Yeah. Those are, you realize probably the same experiences I've had, is that regardless of where you work, we all are going to encounter the same issues. And we may not all have a lethal use of force in our career, but we all have, sleep disruptions. We all have high stress. We all have an administration that we need to navigate. We all have partners that rely on us, and we rely on them. And those are the things that really create the environment where we can allow ourselves to go down that deep hole if we do. It's really not the particular calls we go to. We've all gone to traffic accidents. We've all gone to the vast majority of the calls. There's only a very finite kind of amount of calls that are unique to you versus some other cop. Everything else is pretty much the same. So we're all in the same boat. And so when you get someone who's like, hey, my department would think poorly of me if I express this, thanks for sharing this, that was a huge thing for me. I think you may have heard me talk about this, but like early on, my biggest, the thing that surprised me the most, I guess, was people from my own department were coming up and saying thank you, and I'm glad someone's talking about that. And that was really motivating to even hear that. And now it's, you hear it from outside and other places. But what I like too is that you don't, on your show, though you obviously are open about the fact that you're a police officer, it's not directed just at police. It's called the Man Minutes because it's more open like that, and you're talking about a lot of things that I think any guy, and frankly any person, man or woman, is trying to get better at. And
yeah.
So go ahead.
I think that was the goal for me, because I think, as most cops, like I definitely got stuck in, and you hit on it so good in your TEDx talk. about like when you talked about the second responders. That was awesome, right? Because I think sometimes as cops, we get into this attitude of like, this only affects me. Well, it's not as big a deal because your life's not on the line. Like you get down this, you go down this path where you think your problems are bigger than other people's problems. When in all actuality, like the thought of me getting shot at work sucks for me and my family. The thought of someone that owns a business or works for a different business that's not public safety, that's not a first responder, that's outside that realm, them losing their job and having issues is just a big a deal for their family. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we go down that road. So that's where I wanted to just kind of focus on just dudes in general, man. Like everyone's got demons, everyone's trying to fight them, and it doesn't matter if it's because you might get your life is in jeopardy at work, or if it's because you got some other stuff going on. Like everyone's got issues, and we're all, like you said, we're all way more alike than we think.
Yeah. I like that comparison to I don't like using the term civilian population versus us because we're all civilians, but for lack of a better term, because I haven't come up with one yet, the civilian population of people who are, especially nowadays, running a business, maybe they're wondering if they're going to be able to reopen or if they're going to be able to hire, if they're going to get their job back. There's an intense amount of stress in that kind of environment too, and it's all relative. We're trained to handle a lot of stress, but that doesn't mean that it's absent from our lives. And that leads me kind of to the episode that piqued my interest in your show, which was fighting the good fight, and there's a good transition there. And I liked that episode, and thought I wanted to ask you, from my perspective, we've got the same amount of time on. You work for a very active police department. You were working for a high-level team that's known to be a very good, cohesive SWAT unit, even out here in California. Your agency is thought of very highly. And you're performing at a high level at work. But I can't imagine that day-to-day it's natural to be at 100% or even 99% or even 90% on every day, especially when we've got the stresses and we've got the family, we've got the kids, we've got the side business. What are the specific things you do on a, maybe not daily basis, but a routine basis that keep you in that fight, willing to fight the good fight?
So for me, like it goes back to kind of what I talked about at the beginning is having clear, concise priorities of what is important to me in my life, and always making sure to reference those and go back to those and make sure those are in check, right? I know that if my marriage is not in check and me as a dad is not in check, then I'm not going to be happy overall, because those are always going to be on the back of my mind. I know that I have to take care of myself, physically, right? Fitness and nutrition. And I'm not like a nutrition Nazi, man. Like I got some love handles going on, and I'm cool with it, and I've always had it, and I always will, but it's still a priority to me. Like I try not to put a ton of junk in my body, and I try to take care of it. Because I want to live a long time, and I want to have all the bonuses on my side that I can, right?
Yeah. It's like what is it? Is it Kevin Gilmartin says your job is to make your city go broke with your pension at the end of your career.
Exactly, right? Like I'm sure you guys get them too, but we always get like, they're called emergency notification services or system, and it'll send out something that former officer passed away, and we had an officer that had passed away that, like, we're in 5-digit serial numbers now, and he was a 3-digit number, and this was like a couple months ago, and he was retired for, I want to say it was like 47 or 48 years that he had been retired. And I'm like, that's what it's about right there. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
But I think to go back to the fighting the good fight is we all have that struggle, and you got to find a system in place. Like I journal, I've heard you talk about it. I do. And that's looked on a little funky too at work, but I know that some of the guys that look on it funky are now doing it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of cool to see. And it's a way for me to get some thoughts out there and have a way to decompress. And then that routine is important to me. Like I get up and there's certain things I do, and I'm not perfect about it. Like I think that misconception gets played out a lot, is that like someone like by no means am I doing that every single day. I try to, and I try to make an effort, but sometimes it just doesn't happen because again, it goes back to my priorities. So I'm not going to, if I had 30 minutes when I get home, because we had a call out or something at the end of shift, and I got 30 minutes before my kids go to bed and we had an early morning, like I'm not going to take that up with journaling and not spend my time with my kids. So that's where the priorities come back into play. But having some of those things to schedule out time and make sure you're taking care of yourself are really, really important.
On the journaling, do you use like a prompt journal that asks questions, or is it just open paper and you just write?
Yeah, just open paper, man. I just go for it and just write out thoughts. And someday it may be like, hey, what do I need to do as far as my business goes? Some days it may be with a call. Some days it may be with something I'm struggling with on the inside, but it's just 5-10 minutes for me to just write out what I'm thinking and get it going.
Mm-hmm. With your day, when you start your day, I've tried this and I haven't been successful. But planning the day, like, have you ever tried that where it's like, you go hour by hour and you write off the blocks of chunks of time or anything like that?
Yeah. So I've tried to do like the time blocking, and for me, it doesn't work. Like I can't do it, especially with the job, like, cause you plan it out. And what I have found, and for a lot of guys, is that it actually sometimes can be detrimental to guys that don't have consistent schedules. That if you know that from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning, you can block that time out and nothing's going to interrupt it, cool. Or you know that after 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. you can block that time out, that's cool. But for us, that's usually not the case with shift work and overtime and all those things. So I almost feel like for some guys it's detrimental because you try to time block, but your schedule doesn't allow it. So then you don't get things done that you told yourself you weren't going to do. And now that leads to a lack in confidence because you're not doing what you told yourself you were going to do. And then it just creates a bigger problem.
That was exactly my experience with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So then it just sucks. Like it's not fun to do. So what I do is I try to just do like a 3 to 5 task list. Right. And these 2 or 3 are like non-negotiable. I have to get them done. And then the next 2 to 3 are hopes that I get done, that I'm going to try to get these done today if I can, but if I don't, like I'll get them done tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that works a lot better for me. Like tasking works a lot better for me than time blocking.
Yeah. That's kind of what the resolution I've come up with recently too, is I maintain kind of a lengthy checklist of everything in my head that I think needs to be accomplished. Yeah. And it just feels good to cross those things off of a long checklist. But then I can look at that checklist and judge based on how much time I have or where I'm at or what else is going on, what I can accomplish in that moment or in that day, and know that I'm working towards crossing those things off. And that really helps me feel like I've got a much bigger handle on the big picture,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's been a big change and a big help.
Good. Yeah, no, I enjoy it, man. And I think it's just one of the little things that you can do to kind of help yourself be successful and stay on it. Cause like that term for me, like that Fighting the Good Fight episode was that was a big one for me, man. I had a little dark place over this winter time, not winter out here, but the months of winter, right? It's a little warm out here for that. And it was, I had a buddy shot in November on a big deal we were all working. He's okay, thank God. And we just had some other stuff. We just had another officer out here killed a few weeks ago. And we've just had a few other things that have gone on, and I've gone down that rabbit hole of things. And I look back and I wasn't doing the things I told myself I was going to do, right? I wasn't journaling like I should. I wasn't staying up on reading and doing that. So for me, you had said something, and I think it was a briefing room one where you gave 5 things, five topics that you do. And I think this was a couple years ago, maybe.
The 5 questions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The 5 questions. Right. And one of them was just lead with an open heart. Right. And I think that is so huge, especially for guys, but especially for cops that are guys, because we are so closed off and no one has any issues and no one ever talks about what bothers them. And no one talks about like the actual daily struggle. Like for me, man, like there are incidents that I've been involved in, and you hit it with like the lethal force thing. And hopefully I don't get off too much of a tangent here.
No, fine, go ahead.
But we as cops put this huge emphasis on lethal force incidents. Like, oh my gosh, you haven't been in a shooting. Like, what do they know? Like, dude, like I'm totally cool never being in another one, to be 100% honest. Like that is what I wish for the rest of my career, is to not have to ever do that. Mm-hmm. And so many guys gauge themselves on that, because I know I did before I had been involved in one. We're like, oh man, I've never truly been tested and
100%.
This or that. And it's like, get out of that stinking mindset, dude, because it's not that. Mm-hmm. Like I know dudes that have been in more than I have, and great dudes, and they're built for it. I know dudes that have been in one and it crushed them. So just be careful what you wish for on those things. But it by no means defines who you are as a cop. It by no means makes you less of a cop or less successful or anything like that, or because someone's been in more, or because you haven't been in any. Like, we get in this thought process where that is so important, and it drives me bananas, man. Like, it really does. And it's hard though, because I was there. Like, I was there, and we put a ton of pressure on ourselves for that. But just getting out of that, and that constant, for me, like even to this day, like I have doubts, right? Like if something happens big again, am I going to win? Mm-hmm. Am I going to be able to do my job? Am I going to be a good dad? And knowing that fight in your head is constant for, I would say, the majority of guys that I have met. Like, there's always that battle, and knowing that everyone else is going through it is a huge bonus. And it just helps, because we don't talk about it enough, honestly.
Gosh, I could go off on my own tangent, because that's absolutely right. And that's a direct experience of mine. And I think everyone goes through that and thinks that at some point, and they either resolve it and realize you don't have to go through an OIS or lethal force situation in order to be tested, or they let it eat them up. Those are the two outcomes that you get out of that. And I was for the longest time, and my wife would think I was crazy, because something big would happen on my days off, or I'd get off shift and an hour later something would blow off, right? And I would want to go back to work. I'd want to be there, and I'd feel guilty about the fact that I wasn't there to help. Yeah. And of course, logically or rationally, I was doing my part by being on the shift I was supposed to be on, right? It's pure luck and happenstance when these things kick off versus when you're working. But there's a natural feeling of guilt that you weren't part of the response. Absolutely. Isn't that weird? And so, but the idea that we hold lethal force situations up as the paramount or the pinnacle of the physical or the mental testing of the officer, the gauntlet that you have to go through. And it's ingrained in us through the academy and everything else that, when you go through your practicals or your scenarios, the officer-involved shooting scenario is always the biggest one. It's always the last one. It's always the one with the most pressure, right? And we forget that, frankly, for the vast majority of us, the most pressure might be doing CPR on a baby, or on an old person even, or a medical call, And it took a long time for me I got this analogy once and I really liked it. We all come into this job with a history. By the time you're not a cop younger than 21 years old, right? Anywhere in the United States. And so you have 21 years of history that you're bringing to the job. And on your first day on the job, you bring with you a bucket, right? And that bucket, just as an analogy, is full to some degree with whatever you brought to the job, whether it's abusive home growing up, or it's a good home growing up, or it's a challenge in high school, or it's a learning disability, or it's a challenging relationship that you have at home. Those things fill or reduce your bucket, right? So each of us comes to work with a different size bucket and a different amount in that bucket by the time we become a cop. And then we go through our career adding to that bucket, pouring into that bucket, with very rarely do we actually empty out of it. And so at some point, that bucket spills over if you're not careful about managing and mitigating it by removing the things from that bucket, right? I've always liked that analogy from once I heard it. And I bring that up because, that was my own experience. and feeling like, it looks like I'm not going to ever know if I can, pass that ultimate test. And that was a real kind of like, it was a mind game. And what I did, and I don't necessarily recommend this for everybody, but what I did was I wrote out all of the major incidents that I'd been involved in. Just the stuff off the top of my head I can think of. Not even major, but just like the traffic accident where the car, went off the bridge, or the time I had to, cut the kid down from the stands at the high school when he hung himself off the bleachers. Like just writing things out, writing them all out, just the stuff that came off the top of my head. And I filled 4 pages of a journal in about 25, 30 minutes, just flow of consciousness, thinking of the things I had done, right? There was stuff I thought 2 or 3 days later, I was like, oh yeah, I could add that too. But just in those 30 minutes, 4 pages. And put it down, give it some time, and then go back to it and review that. And you'll realize that those experiences, regardless of what they are so unnatural for anybody to experience any one of those things, much less all of them. And so I always encourage people, be gracious with yourself, right? It's really hard. It's really hard to do that, especially as cops, and to give ourselves some slack. But honor the fact that you went through those 4 pages of things, and that those are more than adequate to prove that you can do it, that you've been there. Because that's why you're in the job in the first place, and that's why the vast majority of people aren't in the job. You've shown up and you did those things. It has nothing to do with pulling a trigger. It really doesn't. No. That was a huge lesson for me.
No, it's huge, and we don't talk about it enough, and we don't. Yeah, we just don't express that enough. It's not like it's a very important part of the job. You need to know how to do. Like, you need to be proficient with your firearms. Like
100%. Citizens
are trusting your fellow officers are trusting you to be that. But for whatever reason, man, that has become the pinnacle, the standard on which everyone judges everyone on, and it's just silly, man. Because I know dudes that have never done a tactical thing. Like that's the majority of my career, right? 11 of 15 years have been on the SWAT team. I know dudes that have never done anything close to that have maybe been in an SRO position, a school resource officer, or some type of community position, that have had far bigger impact on people than I ever have. Like, because they're touching them, like, and you don't know what your impact is. And I think we downplay that a lot, right? Like we downplay that, and it's unfortunate. But to go to your bucket theory, man, I think that's huge, because we all have our own stories. We all had stuff that happened before we were cops, right? Just an example, super upfront, man. My dad passed away when I was little. I was 10 years old. I found him in my parents' bedroom, dead on the floor from a heart attack. Right. And that is something that has stuck with me forever. And a lot of times we will judge other cops, we'll judge other men, we'll judge other people, and we don't know the things that they have been through. Like we just think like, what's his problem? What's he going through? Why is this bothering him? And we don't talk about that stuff enough. Like I go see, like this past fall, winter, man, I just kind of hit a boiling point, and I going to see a counselor. Like, I do it. And some guys may be listening or like, that's weird. Or some people I've talked to think that's silly for a cop to be doing that. Like, what do you know? Or why would you do that? Like, you don't need to do that. You're supposed to be tougher. Like, dude, like, I feel like I'm pretty tough. And there's things that will stick with you, whether it's like you said, the kid at the bleachers, man. Like, I've had some car wrecks. We've had some hostage deals that some kids were involved in that did not go good. And all those little things will overflow you. And if you do not manage that stuff, like, it will eat you up, and it will destroy everything in your life that you think is precious. Yeah. So pretty soon you're not just worried about your career. Pretty soon you're worried about your marriage, being a good dad, all those things. And you gotta have a way to manage that. 'Cause that's something I tell new cops. I'm like, dude, reverse engineer your life. Like, what do you want it to be like? For me, I want to be 100 years old and my kids are saying bye to me in a bed, right? I don't want to be 65 years old, living by myself, getting half my pension because my wife left me and my kids wanted nothing to do with me because I didn't deal with my stuff. Mm-hmm. So think of things that way, and make it happen.
I want to honor the fact that you were so open and sharing the fact that you sought counseling, because I think that is important for more and more of us to acknowledge. And I've talked about it on the show about how I've continue to go to a counselor. And I don't know where I heard it, but I love the quote. I'm not worried about the cop who goes to counseling. I'm worried about the one who doesn't.
Yeah.
At this point, now that I know, that I've gone through that door and brave enough to step through it, because it really is a brave moment to pick up that phone and make a call and then go into that office. Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
But now that I know on the back end and have that hindsight, I'm worried about the people who aren't going,
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's so counterintuitive, right? Because as cops, like, we trust in facts. A lot of us are very black and white. So like, for instance, right, if you want to get better at fitness, you go to someone that knows more than you about fitness and you learn from them. If you want to be a better shooter, you go someone that knows more about shooting and you learn from them. If you want to get better at managing your thoughts, I'm not going to go to anyone and not going to figure anything out because I know it all, right? So it's not the same. Like, there's people that deal with this as they're professionals and they can help you out. Like, it's got such a negative stigma that it's looked down upon. And dude, like, it has been one of the best things I've ever done. I wish I would have done it a long, long time ago.
It's a great comparison. We all go to Chris Costa's course, or we all go to Aaron Baruga's course. We all go to whatever firearms instructor you want to call out, and we'll pay tons of money to go teach them, have them teach us how to shoot a gun that we already know how to shoot. And sure, we might get some tips, we might get some tactics, we might get some little nuggets here and there, but we won't make the investment in going and helping, going to someone who knows how to teach us how to rethink our issues or rethink ourselves, right? Because, like you just said, oh no, I know it all. I'm supposed to know it all. Like, no,
I can handle this.
You go to coaches for everything in your life. We go to gym. You go to you don't decide to go do jujitsu and just go to the store and put on go buy a black belt and all of a sudden you're a black belt. No, you go through the whole process of learning, and this is no different.
Exactly.
But we get so hung up on it.
No, we do.
And we don't do our partners any favors as a profession.
Very true.
So
we do not.
I appreciate that you're in that fight with me to keep it with the analogy to share that and to move that forward. One of my favorite phrases is Stoic Seneca said, "Vivere militare est," which is to live is to fight. And I just think that applies to everything we do in life, not just the physical fight. You got to be ready to fight, but you have to fight to get out of bed sometimes, right? You have to fight to get into the gym. You have to fight to create time. You have to fight metaphorically, of course, to develop a relationship with your spouse and your kids. Those things don't just happen. You have to make the effort. So I always equate that quote of fighting to effort. To live is to make effort.
Yeah.
And in all things we do, and taking care of your mental space and your thoughts are so crucial, because our actions are based completely on our thoughts, and our behaviors are based completely on our thoughts. And if those things aren't in alignment, you're not in alignment and you're out of whack. And I found myself out of whack multiple times in my career, you know, and then getting back into alignment. It's a constant check-in. It's a constant fight, but it's worth it.
It is. Absolutely, man. And I'm sure there's people listening. And if that's you, man, like, take the jump. Like, if you've ever thought about it, or like, hey, maybe that would help, like, go do it. Mm-hmm. And if you tried a few times and it doesn't help you, then, like, hey, but it will. Yeah. So I think guys, like, people just got to understand that. Like, it's a constant struggle. Like, it should be, right? Yeah. It means you're moving in the right direction. It means you're moving somewhere. 'Cause if you're giving up and you're just sitting on your couch and you're doing nothing, like, then you're losing.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not taking action to do or accomplish the things that you want.
One thing I'll add, just to wrap up that topic too, for people, is don't assume that the first person you go to is the be all end all or the right one either. Because it's like any other relationship. But like your buddies, you don't just go, like, look someone up on Facebook, drive over to the house and hang out with them and drink beer on the couch. You know, right. You have to build a relationship. So if If you try it and you think, no, it's not for me, that person was a wacko, well, maybe it was just that one person. You need to find the one that works for you.
Absolutely.
Mine, he's this is random, but the therapist that I see right now, he's a retired Marine Corps drill instructor, right? And so like he gets it. He gets the paramilitary style that we work in. He knows how to talk to people like that. So that's completely random. I never would have thought someone like with that history would now be doing counseling.
Yeah.
But it works. And I went to people who were much more kind of traditional or like low key, didn't work for me. But then when I found him and it clicked, it just totally clicked, and I was like, okay, now I get what this is all about.
No, that's a great point. Like find one that works, because there's a lot of different ones out there, and that's a great example you used.
Yeah. All right, Matt. So before we wrap up, I want you to direct people to where they can find out more about you, your podcast, your blade company, all the stuff you got going on. Give us the rundown of where they can learn more about you.
Right on. Thank you. So on Instagram, I am MilMak AZ, so MilMak AZ, and then also MilMak Blades, so MilMak Blades. And the website for the blades is milmakaz.com. And you can find a bunch of stuff on there. You can check some things out, and always feel free to shoot me a message. You got any questions, anything like that.
And the podcast is the Man Minutes.
Podcasts.
Really enjoy it. And
Thank you.
Do you write out your thoughts before you because you're so cohesive, right? And one of the things I do when I do like a briefing topic, I have to write it out, because otherwise I ramble, I get off topic, I forget things. But you sound like you're just talking off the top of your head, but you're hitting all these points. Do you just go off the cuff or an outline, or do you write verbatim? What do you do?
No, so like thank you for that, by the way. Man Minutes, and you can find it wherever, all sorts of different platforms. But for me, I'll write down like, hey, here's the idea for the episode. This is what it's going to be about. And then I'll write literally like 2 or 3 bullet points, and
there you go.
Just go from there. Yeah, man. Like it's
impressive.
That's what I try to do.
It's a talent I don't have. I can't stay focused like that. So yeah, the Man Minutes podcast. We'll put the links to the Blade Company and your Instagram, MilMak Blades Instagram. We'll put all those in the show notes at thesquadroom.net. People can find your information there if they can't go directly to the site from wherever they are right now. Justin, thanks for being on the show. That was a real fun discussion about a lot of different stuff. It just reiterates to me that regardless of where you work, regardless of the size of your agency, we all share far more in common than we do have in differences. So it's always nice to have that affirmation or be reaffirmed that someone else is in there, again, fighting that good fight and moving themselves forward, moving their families forward, trying to bring some positivity to their agency. So thanks for what you're doing, man.
No, Garrett, thank you, man. Like, I think you are helping more dudes than you are ever going to know. So thank you for being one of the first people in this space to kind of putting some of that stuff out and being real. And we need more of it. So thank you. And thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure and my honor. Thanks, man. All right. If you like something that you heard today on the show, if you got something out of the episode, please, please, please share it with someone you care about, a partner, a spouse, a loved one, someone who needs to hear the importance of having a coach when it comes to your mental health, not just your firearms training, the importance of creativity, the importance of having a checklist and setting priorities. Lots of great stuff in this episode. You can share it directly from thesquadroom.net. You can share it from your phone. You can do all sorts of things. If you really got something out of this episode, please consider leaving a review on the podcast player of your choice. It helps us spread the word of this show. It's not just an ego boost for me. It certainly is, but it's not just an ego boost for me, because our rankings improve when we get ratings, especially when we get ratings with a narrative or a typed explanation as to why you gave it whatever rating you gave it. And then we get to be in front of more cops, and more cops get to hear the message of our guests, and there go, we hopefully help more people. That's why these reviews are so important. Please consider leaving a review and help your fellow officers. I want to thank Hard to Kill Fitness for their support of the show. You can check them out on Instagram at hardtokill_fitness, or of course their website, hardtokillfitness.co. They're fantastic human beings, and they've really been great about supporting the work I'm trying to do here. And of course, Justin has offered for Squad Room listeners, if you go to his website, milmakaz.com, you can get $15 off your first blade with the coupon code TheSquadRoom, and all one word, all lowercase, and he'll give you $15 off your first blade. Again, the website, MilMakAZ.com, to check out the blades that Justin's working on. He makes some cool stuff. They're quality. And, rather than go out and support a giant international, multinational corporation, support a fellow cop who's trying to do something in the world. That's really cool. All right, so the Squad Room, all lowercase, $15 off your first blade at MilMakAZ.com. And, of course, don't forget our shop, worthycauselife.com, for T-shirts related to the podcast, mugs, stickers, etc. All right, that's enough talking for me today. Until next time, take care of each other and stay safe.